Welcome back to our series, How to Pray. I'm Professor Avram Apatow, and today we're going to speak about Jewish cosmology. Why is it important to have a vivid picture of our cosmos, to have an actual cosmology? For many, there's a prejudice of our scientific perspective that says, why does one need cosmology? We have science. Science explains what the cosmos is, because the cosmos, the universe, is just a physical entity. I believe this perspective is very mistaken and has a lot of flaws, and I'm going to discuss that in a lot of detail in coming presentations. But I would like to introduce the subject by explaining to you very briefly a quick overview of what Jewish cosmology is in the big picture. Jewish cosmology has three levels. The levels are the earthly level, the heavenly level, that is actually space, the stars, constellations, and planets, and then the spiritual, angelic, divine level. Those three levels are the basic divisions of the universe that God created. It's cosmological and in a sense metaphysical, you could say, because there's, in that picture, those different levels have a different nature. The level of the angelic and spiritual, you might say, is very different than the level of the physical world. It has different characteristics, different qualities. There's also a difference between that intermediary level, the level of the planets and the stars. From a scientific perspective, there can't be any difference between levels. First of all, and from a scientific perspective, obviously there's no angels or spirits. Secondly, the heavens have to be exactly like the earth. It's a physical part of the creation. And even though the dynamics of space may be different, it's still a physical reality. So in essence, it's not different, you might say metaphysically, the heaven from the earthly. Now, there's a very different purpose in cosmology from an ancient perspective as opposed to the scientific way of looking at the world. The scientific way of the world, they're just trying to discover knowledge, scientific knowledge about how aspects of physical reality interact. This cosmological picture is trying to explain the dynamic relationship between those three parts. And I'm going to give you a very specific example, because those three parts of the grand macrocosm of the universe, the big picture of the universe, has a correspondence with other things in our reality, so that man is actually an image of the cosmos. He's called a microcosm, a small version of the universe. How is that? Because he also has three aspects. Those three aspects in Hebrew are called the nefesh, ruach, and neshama. That is the physical reality. It's called the nefesh. The neshama is the higher intellectual, spiritual aspect of man. The ruach is that spiritual element that enlivens the body. And that is also the center of our emotions. And it's an intermediary level because that ruach, that life energy, can be directed towards the physical, towards the emotions about our hunger and passions about physical life, but that energy also can be directed upwards towards the more intellectual or spiritual aspects of life. It's an emotional, spirited element that can be used in various ways. Now we can see that same correspondence in the structure of the people of Israel. There are three classes of people within the nation of Israel. There are Kohanim, Leviim, and then the people of Israel. And what do those three parts, what are the characteristics of those three parts? We can see very clearly that the Kohanim correspond to the more spiritual, the more intellectual. They are the teachers, people who devote their lives not to working the land and the earth just to make a living. They're separated and freed from those responsibilities so they can engage in the Torah and wisdom and the work of teaching the people and doing service, holy service to God in the temple. So they correspond to the spiritual or angelic element in the cosmos and to that higher aspect of man, the neshama. On the other extreme are the people of Israel, the majority of people. Their focus is on physical life, creating families, supporting families, working the land, having careers, and building the physical reality for the nation, and also providing the needs for the tribe of Levi and the Kohanim among them. So here we have the two extremes of the people, the Kohanim being the spiritual and wise leaders, and then you have the majority of the tribes, the regular person who's involved in the physical tasks of building physical reality. So the question is, how do we bring those two together? Because it's a relationship. The whole of the people have to be united, but if you have two extremes, how can we bring them together? Well, that's the role of the middle term. The middle place is the place of the Leviim. And what was the task of the Leviim? One of their main tasks was to be singers and musicians. And it is through song and music that our emotions, that spirited element within us is aroused, and that music can be used to turn us towards the lower aspects of life, or that music can be used to elevate the emotions and the spirit to higher ideals and to the spiritual. And that was the purpose of the Leviim. They were the musicians in the temple, so that when the people gathered in Jerusalem, the music of the Leviim would direct their hearts to the higher values and spiritual goals and spiritual holy work of the festivals and the life of holiness and Kedusha. So we see that this structure within the people of Israel is parallel to the individual human being, but it's also parallel to the cosmos as a whole, because we also know that in the ancient vision of the cosmos, the stars and the planets and their motions created what was called the music of the spheres, a heavenly kind of music. And as we'll see that, well, actually, you see very clearly in Tehillim, David HaMelech says, the Hashemayim Mesaprim Kavod El, that when we look at the stars, they are telling us the greatness and the glory, the holiness of God from the awesome vision that they display for us. So there, in a sense, just that vision is a kind of power of music to elevate and lift the soul. So we can see there's a beautiful correspondence, a beautiful harmony in this picture. And in the next several presentations, I'm going to go into a lot of detail of this, because this answers a lot of the questions that we have about how to pray, the structure of prayer, the purposes of Torah. And I also go into a lot of detail to show that this, what may seem to be an ancient, outdated unscientific view of the world has a lot of relevance from many perspectives. Number one, from just basically understanding our tradition and our texts and our prayers, but also it has, in fact, a scientific relevance, a human relevance, and a very practical relevance, both to the Jewish people and to all people. So stay tuned, and we'll talk about that in a lot of detail in upcoming presentations.